Thanks very much for that kind introduction. I'll just see if you can. I'll put that down there and try not to move around too much because I might tip it off. Thank you for having me, Waikanae Rotatory. I actually always enjoy coming out here, but I really would rather turn left and go down to the beach than right up to Elizabeth Street. Every time I come out here I seem to be turning right because I'm usually talking about transport issues or something, but the beach is nicer. Thank you for taking an interest in this subject, which is important. It's about our future. But actually, it's not about the future of all of us in this room. It's actually about the future of our children and probably more importantly, our grandchildren. So I always like to think 20 or 30 years ahead, not who's going to be the leader in 2016 or who the council is going to be. This is one of the volumes of the report that the Commission released. Probably nobody's read it. Anyone read it? Yes. Good on you. Oh, Penny here. Michael? Others? Yeah, good on you. If you, we have a summary document, and there's some at the back which you can pick up on one on the way out if you wish to. There's also a pamphlet. Where did I put the pamphlet? Which I was going to. Oh, here it is. So I want to talk, Rich, I'm going to quote from the pamphlet to start with. I just want to run through today what the arrangements will be for cover, but firstly, why is this being composed? And I don't want to give a great long speech about that because it's better to do some questions and answers, I think. But the Commission itself actually summed up what I think are our issues in this pamphlet. And they say, why are these changes proposed? The significant challenges coming up for Wellington councils and region are regional rather than local and require a regional response. And that absolutely is correct. Current council structures make it difficult to achieve coordinated responses. That is correct. The region is connected by strong economic and cultural factors such as patterns of work, travel, spending, recreation and settlement. And I don't need to tell you that here. You know how many thousands of people from Company Coast go to work in Wellington each day, and how many of you actually used to live in Wellington City and have moved out here, which many of us do in Wellington. And the other thing is, of course, how many people from Wellington City own beach houses out on the Company Coast. They talk about the challenges, and they are obviously big things like transport networks and replacing ageing infrastructure. And 50%, almost 50% of the water pipes and 40% of the wastewater pipes need replacing, and there's a huge estimated bill for that. But we've also got natural hazards, and you're very familiar with that because of the debate that's happened out here about coastal setback, upgrading information technology, economic growth, high regulatory standards for fresh water. I mean, that's something that's coming, it's already there, and it's going to be higher and higher actually in the law now. And obviously cultural and recreational facilities, which are going to need to change because we have ageing populations. So we might need fewer rugby grounds and more bowling clubs or things that more passive recreation that older citizens can do. So then they say, what are the key issues? Rating systems, conditions of assets, level of council services, nature of council investments and future development plans. You can have one of these on the way out too, it's worth reading. In particular, I just wanted to talk about Kapiti, and I have to say I think this is fabulous, but you do have some challenges out here. And there were two things that kind of join together. One of them is you have quite a high level of debt here, your council, and that's because previous councils, or councils successfully, have invested a lot in particular infrastructures. What it's meant is that you actually, they say, you and Masterton are amongst the New Zealand councils with the highest debt ratios. And they say once the value of the income-earning assets is considered, it becomes clear that the council that is most challenged by the scale of its borrowings is Company Coast District Council. With just over 10% of the region's population, Company Coast hold 29% of the net debt. But overall, they say, if you put everyone together on the same table, we're okay. We're in a reasonably sound financial condition. And I guess the challenge for residents and ratepayers out here is compounded by what's happening with your demographics. We're all getting older, and New Zealand is getting older, the Western world's getting older, and some places are getting older at a faster rate than others. So they say the particular challenge of the Kapiti Coast community with a relatively high level of council debt, significant investment required in both replacing existing infrastructure and building new infrastructure, and a large proportion of the community on fixed incomes with limited ability to pay. And that is a very significant thing that we all have to consider. So what I'm hearing from around the region is that people think that an amalgamation will take away the local decision-making ability. So what I'm hearing, all the decisions will be made in Wellington. You know, we all have to pay for Wellington's debt. Well, probably Kapiti people wouldn't say that. If they were smart, they wouldn't be saying that particular one. But I've given you out this bit of paper, and I just want to actually take you through it, because in taking you through it, we can explain how it will work. First thing to say is this is different from Auckland, because although it's the same basic model, there were a lot of lessons learned from Auckland. The government has actually changed the Local Government Act subsequent to Auckland. Commission has learned lessons, and they actually talk about the Auckland experience in there. And there are some proposals here which are different from how Auckland was when it was set up in Auckland. So just run through this quickly. They proposed that there will be a unitary authority comprised of a governing body and 8 local boards. Just start with that, I have to say I'd much rather they call them councils, not boards, but they're not allowed to under the law. But effectively they are doing a lot of the work that your current councils do. You might recall that there was a report done by Geoffrey Palmer which came out with a similar model, but actually suggested that the local entities be called councils and that the chairs of those be called mayors. And then Geoffrey had a problem then with what he'd call the person who's the leader of the region, and he had a name for that, which was the Australian and British model, which was Lord Mayor. Of course, we all feel about laughing at that, but they do that in other jurisdictions, and that really signifies that they're the mayor of a bigger area. So, so we have these 8 local boards, which are pretty much the same boundaries, the same communities as are covered now. Now that is the first thing that's different from Auckland, where Rodney Hyde made the decisions. He set up a transition board, and one of the instructions, probably never written down but very clear, was he wanted to destroy the local government culture, and some of those boundaries go right through Auckland communities. Regardless of that, the local boards there have actually done a pretty good job of, and regardless of the conditions that they were set up with, they've actually pushed out quite a lot in terms of how they act. But it will be different here right at the start, just even in terms of representation. So Kapiti Coast will be one board, exactly corresponding to the current boundaries of Kapiti Coast District Council. So the organisation will be one organisation, one CEO, one senior management team, and all of the staff will be put into, this on the same payroll. And so your local librarians and your local people that do land management or anything else, whatever they might have done before for either KCDC or Greater Wellington Regional Council, will be doing the same jobs, but they'll be just employed by this Greater Wellington Council. You'll pay one rate instead of 2 rates. So talking about the governing body first, that will be 21 councillors, again elected by the same wards with the same council boundaries. The big exception is Wellington City, I'll talk about that in a minute, but 2 of the councillors for the governing body will be elected from Kapiti. You currently have 1 of the regional council, you have 2 under this proposal. And Wellington City has been divided into 3 because it was too big for, it's half the region in terms of population, and they split it into 3 along the same boundaries as the Wellington City ward boundaries. So you've got southeast, left, and they call it Central 1, and the northwest ward. Here, then there will be these 8 boards. Your board again largely corresponds with, in fact it does, with the splits that you've got in the Kapiti Coast constituencies now within the District Council. Representation there on that front page, 2 from Otaki, 2 from Waikanae, 3 from Harakaramu and 2 from Paikakariki Raumati. Chairs of the local boards are elected by members of the board. That is different from now. We would prefer that they were elected at large and they could have been called mayors, but they're not, because that's not available under the laws of this model. However, I have to say that I am elected not at large. I'm elected by Wellington City and I get quite a big vote there. But as chair of the regional council, I'm elected by the other councillors. And I'm called the chair, I'm not called the mayor, and it's never held me back from having a view or saying things or doing things or being effective in terms of what I might do. Not having the title or the chain has not worried me one bit. In fact, it's rather nice not to have a chain, because I used to have all that occasionally when I was Mayor of Wellington. It was far too heavy. I only wore it very occasionally, I have to say. So, in addition, the model says in addition to the elected members, 2 will be appointed to each board from the local members of the governing body. I don't think that's a particularly good thing, because I think that means that the local board might feel that the governing body is pushing it around, or vice versa, and I just think there should be a completely different membership of both levels. And that's something that we're going to be submitting on, I think. The other thing that's been a big bone of contention here and in the hut is about local boards, community boards, the current community boards. And I think it's important to say that currently under the law you can have something called a local committee. And they are there already. In fact, in some places in New Zealand, including the hut, they have local committees. They can have exactly the same delegations as community boards, and they can be set up by the local council wherever they want to. In Kapiti, the community boards nearly fell over in, I think, 2008. It was a very close vote on the KCDC as to whether or not to keep them, and they did keep them, but you'd be perfectly able to have local committees if you wished. They are appointed by the local board, but the local board is perfectly able to run an election process if it wishes and appoint the people that come through that. So, from my point of view, this is no different from what you've got now in terms of local committees. I would have them if I were out here, and I would push much more delegation down to them than they probably have now. I'd actually give them a really good push about doing local stuff. Key thing, the debate has been about powers, and this is where the Commission has been quite clear, and I'll just read you a bit of the pamphlet. They say, the local boards would carry out the responsibilities and powers of the new council, unless the matters were regional, where they would be the responsibility of the new mayor and the councillors. And they've reflected that in here. And in their draft proposal, which is this volume and the other 3, they actually legally, they can't actually say this is how it's going to be. They can only say this is what we think it should be. It's a bit semantic. And they've said here, this is what we would do in a final, this is what a final proposal would look like. So there are 2 areas of decision making. One is what's called non-regulatory, which is pretty much a lot of what councils do, and the other is regulatory, which is making the bylaws. And here is the list of all of the things that the local boards would do and the governing body would do. Local boards would have to do a plan every year like they do now, consult and come back and say, yeah, the community wants this or that, and this is what we would have to, we want to do this year. And in terms of regulatory, the law has been changed. It is now, they're able to actually delegate regulatory matters now. The council can delegate down and they can be delegated down again. And this is the proposal that the Local Government Commission is putting forward. They're saying we want as much delegated down as possible. And I think that's really important to remember, that there will be a lot of local decision making in this model. So what won't be done locally? Well, big infrastructure. So the 3 waters, which is drinking water, wastewater and stormwater. Roads, probably we don't do it, government does it or private sector, but broadband, so probably kind of like broadband policy. And importantly, something that we call spatial planning, which is the most terrible name, but actually it's, for me it's been one of the things that's been really interesting about what they've done in Auckland. So the Auckland plan, which probably maybe not many of you have read, is a rather large document, first one of its kind in the country, and it's really what we call a spatial plan. And one of the parts of it that I really love is called the Southern Initiative. And when Manukau City was a city, it was bigger than Wellington City, I think, or about the same size maybe. They couldn't do the stuff they wanted to do. They have a lot of areas of social deprivation there. Len Brown was near them, Manukau. And we have similar, we have Porirua Hut, Lower Hut, we have Wairapa. There are patches of social deprivation all over the region. What they've done in Auckland is, with this initiative, is they brought everyone together. They had the publics, they had central government, which is something we can never do in Wellington. We can never get the government to sit down with us properly. Local government, the community and the private sector, which is very important, and they've developed this Southern Initiative. So they're saying, where do we want this part of Auckland to be in 20 or 30 years' time? What does it need? What infrastructure does it need? What planning do we have to do? Who will do what? Is it private sector? Is it government? Is it, you know, and there's kind of a consensus going forward on that with the community. And I think that's really, really important. So that spatial planning will be something that we can do regionally. We've got competition at the moment amongst all of the TAs about where the growth will be. You guys are getting growth whether you like it or not. We're planning for possibly up to 20,000 more people here in the next 20 years or so. It could be much more when Transmission Gully is finished, which will be, I'm told, within its time frame of 5 years, well within that, they will finish it early. I think it's just going to go ballistic out here. And your issue there will be completely the opposite of the issue that the Hutt Valley and Wairapa have, where their issue is contraction. And yours is going to be huge, rapid expansion, where you're going to need a depth of capability in a council that you probably can't afford now with the Waikanae base. So this is no comment on current council staff, how good or bad they are, or councillors or anything like that. It's simply about what you can afford in terms of expertise. We put all of that expertise on the same table. It's available for the whole region and it'll be able to be used everywhere. So to my mind, that is a very strong argument in favour of putting the council together, because we all get a share in that, in that expertise, which many of the smaller councils just simply can't afford now, and they're really struggling with their infrastructure, their water infrastructure in particular. So that is a biggie for me. So planning, infrastructure, and the other thing is the economic development side, and being able to just face off with central government. So Mayor of Auckland's always in Wellington. I think he spends more time there than he does up there. He's always in the Beehive. We, as the group of mayors in Wellington and me, in the last 3 years of government had one meeting with John King. And even then we couldn't agree on a whole lot of stuff. In Auckland there is a structured interface with central government which actually happens regularly. The senior managers meet weekly. And there's a big building in Queen Street full of government departments. Never used to be there. They're all moving up there now. They have offices there. They have Auckland policies. Nobody that I know of in the government has a Wellington policy. They all have Christchurch policies, and so they should after the earthquake, but they don't actually have Wellington policies. We're the place where their officials live and where they stay during the week when they're in Wellington, in the Parliament. So we really need to get our act together in terms of the interface and the communication and the dialogue with the central government, which is very suboptimal at the moment. Just wanted to finish with a couple more points before I'd like some discussion actually. What are you interested in? Area offices and service centres, you see I've put it in that bit of paper. All of the current council offices will stay open. They have to stay open for 5 years. After that, I suppose the council will close them, but it would be pretty brave council that would close the council office. So, and they're saying the service areas too, so I think that includes Otaki Waikanae, the service centres will stay open. And they can put in more if they want to, but they can't put in less than what they've got now. And the key thing to me is that if this goes through to the, and it gets through, and I'll tell you about that process in a minute, there will be a transition board, and unlike Auckland, it will be populated by the local councils, so there will be a person on that board from every local council, and I'm assuming that they'll fight hard, as will anyone who goes from our council, to have, as the Commission has proposed, as much as possible decided locally, and only have those things that are really regional decided regionally. So they will work with the transition board of the Commission to do the details of the new arrangement and to get all that right. Process from now on is submissions close on this on the 2nd of March, and then the Commission will have hearings, and they will then, well, they've got several options. They can do nothing. They can say we don't want to make any changes, or they can say we want to do what we've proposed here, or they can tweak what they've proposed here and maybe do something different. If they propose to do anything at all, then there will be a referendum. That's triggered by 10% of the ratepayers in any one district signing a petition to do it. That will happen. Everybody wants that, and we'll just make sure it happens on day one. So there'll be a referendum quite quickly as soon as they get the rolls, and all of that's run by the Commission. People will have a vote over the whole region, and the 50% plus one voter vote for it, it will happen. And then the next election is 2016, and that's when the new council will be elected. It's a very short timetable, and I would imagine that they will need quite a few transition provisions, over the first few years of the council, because that's quite a short transition time. Look, that's kind of a shorthand for what's happening, and it's a shorthand for the reasons for why it's happening. But I would really value some interaction, particularly obviously from the Rotary members who are here, because you invited me, about what you're interested in and what your views are, and if you've got any questions. The Commission itself is a statutory authority, so it's independent from the government, and I know that governments don't always agree with the Commission. The current chair is Basil Morrison, who used to be the chair of local government New Zealand and was the mayor of Waikanae for several years, a small rural community, and there are 2 other commissioners. So it's a statutory board, basically like a board of inquiry.
Thank you. I'd like to ask whether you support my proposal, and it could apply to the regional council right now, so that we can obtain a better form of democracy. At the moment, we only have the choice of voting for one councillor. I'd like to see it introduced so we have 2 votes, one for our local councillor and one for the other councillors. It means that I can vote for someone like Paul Bruce or Sue Kay, or not vote for people. At the moment we don't have those choices yet. Those councillors have a lot of say over our area. And the second thing is, would you support the introduction of a rotational regime where councillors are elected, they can only serve 2 terms, they then have to stand down, so we get new blood regularly, instead of the same old, what voted in by whatever lobby. And then after a term away, they can come back again. Would you support that?
Okay, Fred, thanks for that question. Good to see you here tonight. Didn't know you're a Rotary member, but
Don't have to be.
you're not? Okay, well, good to see you anyway. Fred's a regular. We talk with him a lot about transport issues, you see, and environmental issues.
You only give me 3 minutes.
But the question on the voting system is determined by law. I have to say I was a supporter and still of STV. I would have preferred that when we went to EVP for the big parliamentary elections. But we have recommended, and I think they've picked it up, an STV system for here. So you would still have a ward vote though. You will have 2 votes because you'll be able to vote for your board members. Are you actually in the Kapiti constituency or just a...
Otaki.
You're in Otaki, you're in Otaki, yeah, that's fine. So you'd have you'd have ward people to vote for, plus you'd have your 2 regional people to vote for. But you wouldn't be able to vote for the regional people in the other wards. And I mean, I personally support ward representation. I think that's good, that you vote for people who will represent your district. I think that's quite important actually, just like Parliament. Fixed terms, no, I don't agree with that. I think that 6 years is not that. Personally, I'd rather have, maybe I would if the term was longer. 3 years is not very long at all, and 6 years is actually not that long at all. So I agree we need more turnover, but I don't support 6 years as a maximum.
Can you please expand on the idea of the way you were voted on, currently on the regional council? You voted by the board or by your group of councillors, vis-a-vis the elected at large mayor coming through under this proposal. The pros and cons of both structures. So I think that's a fascinating point.
Yep. Well, look, I've been a mayor, and I was Mayor of Wellington, and I've been a chair of the regional council. And the difference was, of course, that the Mayor of Wellington was elected by all the people in Wellington, and the regional council chair, as I said, was elected only by the regional councillors. So it hasn't really held me back in terms of how I operate, if you want. There are pros and cons. I mean, you know, you can say if you're the mayor and you're elected at large, I've got a mandate. Len Brown has said that in Auckland. I'm not sure he's got a mandate for everything. He claims to have a mandate. Well, people like to say I've got a mandate because that kind of gets them off the hook. But there is also, if you're elected by your fellow councillors, you know, you've got their support too, which is helpful. So I think it's, you know, there's arguments for and against both, actually. But the law says that you can only have one mayor in a local authority area, and the local authority area as a unitary council would be the region. It would be a city region. And so you would only have one person called a mayor, but you would have these other people who are the local board chairs who would be elected by their peers, and hopefully they would have the confidence of their fellow board members. Certainly the board chairs I've talked to from Auckland have said, well, actually I am the mayor really. That's, you know, people still come to me with the same issues. They still do the representation stuff. They would do the citizenship stuff. They would do all of that kind of representation stuff, but they also chair the board, which makes decisions. And as I said, importantly, in this proposal, the delegations will be stronger at the beginning. I think in Auckland they had to fight for some of their own boards, frankly, and I didn't agree with that at the beginning. I don't know, well, I know why. It was because of the political environment, you know, and the political masters, if you want, set it up.
When the proposal sort of roughly speaking, a couple of issues here. One was the level of representation, etc.
Yeah.
And also going for the plans for the future for the region. What about the financial aspect? And what are some estimates that have been done on how the votes in this area would be affected? We would be able to do lots of things.
That's the region.
I like to get a lot more fight to deal with it. Now, because of the calculation and whatever things can be done to make the operation more efficient over the region.
Well, first thing about that's a really important question, and a lot of people ask that. First thing is, that the Commission have recommended, and I agree with this, that you put all the debt on the same table and all the assets on the same table. So they don't ring fence the debt. And for Kāori people, I would suggest that's quite important, actually. I've had people from the rest of the region saying, oh, we'll just be paying Wellington City's debt. Well, that's not true. Wellington City is the biggest, it's half the region of population. It has the big CBD there, which pays a differential rate, so it pays, this is a burning issue with property owners there. But as an aside, I'll say that the property owners, even though they know that their money, even now under the regional council goes out around the region, favour amalgamation. So it's really interesting. The people who will be doing a lot of the funding of what's going on generally favour amalgamation, so that's interesting. For Kapiti, the debt will be put on the table with every other, and so I would imagine that you will have a little bit of shelter there, which will be helpful. All our populations are getting older. Yours is getting bigger too, and so is Wellington City. Wellington City is probably going to be younger than yours because the kids are going in there, they're going to the universities there, and working, etc. But you're still going to have young people obviously growing here as well, but you will have a proportionately larger number of people on fixed incomes, and that is the big issue that the whole of New Zealand is looking at now. We've got people on fixed incomes who, and the councils want to do their infrastructure or whatever, and you can't afford to pay more rates. And you might be in a home that's quite high value, it might be your old family home, but your kids are gone, and so you're still paying the rates. So I personally, probably the two councils that will most benefit from this will be Kapiti and Porirua, which is kind of at the opposite end. It's a lot of young people. They have a small number of ratepayers in Porirua. But Hata also, they've got funding issues coming up too when they start replacing their infrastructure. So the big issue for you will be the rating system. So in most of New Zealand now people are on capital value rates, but here you're on land value. So most of the Wellington region is now on capital value. I think the last, this South Wairarapa has still got land value, and not generally, but in some places, Carterton moved capital value a few years ago. So people here, this is probably bad news for some of you, maybe not all of you, if you've got a really, really big flash house on a cheap section, you'll probably be paying more rates when you move to capital value. But if you've got a very expensive waterfront section and not such a big flash house, then there'll be swings and roundabouts, ups and downs, winners and losers on that. But the big change in Auckland on the rating system was they had 4 different sorts of rating systems. And when they put them together, a lot of the people also hadn't been on capital value rates before, were in the most expensive parts of Auckland, and their rates just went burko. But a lot of Aucklanders also had rates decreases. And I read the Herald every day, and I don't actually recall reading on the front somebody complaining that their rates went down. So there are one of the differences when you change your rating system. But I think generally, if you look at Kapiti as a community, you're like, this will be helpful for you, particularly with all of that big growth coming here. This is a massive growth area. And when TG goes through, this will be the place to be. And you're going to get a lot of growth very quickly, and I know your council is planning for it, but I suspect it's going to be even bigger than people think. So, does that answer the question? Yeah.
My questions, Fran, are 2. So the first one you say is that the lessons have worked, and I'm very interested to know what that statement because to my knowledge and
I'm sorry, I can't answer all of that in one. There's more questions we have it later. Okay. Firstly, Penny, the point of amalgamation is actually not just to save money. Frankly, there's plenty of ways of saving money. You just cut services, etc. The point of amalgamation, as I said right at the beginning, is to give ourselves more capability for the future, 20, 30 years' time. So we're actually shaping the future in a better way than we can do it now. It's never been in our book here, in terms of the people that support it in the region, about saving money. Interestingly, in Auckland they have saved money, but Penny will argue till the cows come home, and she's the expert on everything, but I have to say that you're not going to get some of the kind of stuff that Penny has always wanted from councils pre-amalgamation too, by the way. So yes, the local government commission did learn from Auckland. They learned that boards didn't have enough power, for instance. They learned, and the government, the law says funding follows function now. If they have a function, it has to be paid for. It has to be funded by the ratepayer. So those are the sorts of lessons that they learned about not cutting up communities of interest. They learned a whole lot of things actually from Auckland. And that's really what I'm here to talk about tonight. I really don't want to argue with somebody from Auckland about official information requests or anything like that. It's something that's going to be very fruitful for people tonight.
One more question. Down there.
Now, as a resident from Newtown, I've come all the way up here
Wow.
to, do a fair bit myself.
Want to lift back?
No, I've got my own car, thanks. Or I've got the train.
I thought you were going to say you came on the train.
Oh, no, it's quite by car. At the occasion.
Oh no, you got that wrong.
At the time I went. What's more coming is there were many options that they considered in the local government report for part 2, which I read in detail.
Yeah.
Why are they choosing the super city model of one unitary authority, considering there were other ones that might have been more beneficial, such as the status quo, which has been mentioned to be the cheapest and most cost effective in that report?
Well, I know there's a page about transition costs, and obviously status quo is the cheapest transition cost because there aren't any. You're not changing anything. But actually, they actually had 18 proposals or something, and they had to make a decision within the parameters of the law. So, for example, the Hutt Council suggested a Hutt unitary authority, Upper Hutt, Lower Hutt, and a Wairarapa one and a Western one, up, Kapiti down to Wellington. Wairarapa suggested a Wairarapa unitary, and then all the rest, whatever. I mean, the law actually is quite specific about this. So look at Wellington and the Hutt, for instance. The law actually says you have to be able to deal with water catchments on the same table if you want. That's shorthand. So Wellington Harbour is the catchment for Hutt and Wellington, and Porirua Harbour is the catchment for Porirua and Wellington City too. So there are some real issues there with breaking the region into unitaries. At the present, the water catchment issues are done by the regional council. So, but if you split, it would be effectively splitting the regional council into bits and then putting the TA accountabilities with them. So they looked at all of those, and if you read the report, which I would recommend if you're that interested, read the chapter on, or whatever, however, there's a lot of work here on why some of those other proposals wouldn't work. They simply don't comply with the law, or they would have, in the case of Wairarapa, they just said they can't afford to be by themselves, actually. That's the summary of kind of what they said. There's been quite a lot of work done on that. Wairarapa councils, it's not all of the council laws, but the councils have said, no, we can afford it and we just wouldn't do a lot of stuff. But some of the stuff they wouldn't do is pretty critical environmental work, erosion control, things like that, and frankly, it would be really hard to, silly actually not to do that. But others, like the regulatory stuff, it's just getting more and more expensive now with the RNA. So they go into all of this here. and they said the best model is as much as possible local decision making, as near as possible to what you get now, but the big issues that are really hard for the councils, you lift up to regional level. And that's pretty much the summary of what they've said.
Cool. No more questions. Fran, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the club and those people here tonight. And some come later today. I don't think that's and every week these Rotary members remind me of that. But having said that, I've heard of you and you seem to, through your life, have been showing you on and meeting here on.
Generally unpopular issues that people don't like when they first hear about them. Yes.
Thank you for that idea. Patrick Francis again at Waikanae spoke very highly when he worked with you on the
Yep.
Most enjoyed the night and good enjoyed. Thank you very much for giving us the time to come all the I happen to overhear that you guys number 10. So here's my...
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, those on the way out.